So in this video, we're going to talk about nonverbal communication. I know some people say that not most communication, 95% of it is nonverbal. I don't buy that, right? But it is an important part of communication. And as a delegate, you need to be mindful of all that. So I want to talk about a number of different aspects of nonverbal communication. So first, posture. I know you're going to hate this, but posture. When speakers slouch, their shoulders are like caved in, it denotes a lack of confidence. It looks as if what they're trying to do is make themselves smaller. They're trying to shrink themselves. When a speaker's posture is good, it not only denotes confidence, but it also makes it easier to breathe from the diaphragm and speak from your diaphragm. So it gets two things accomplished at the same time. And don't take my word for it. Try speaking in both positions and see if you notice a difference in the volume. See if you notice a difference in the tone in your voice. And more importantly, and this is the really weird part of public speaking, see if you notice a difference in how you feel. Right? When you stand with your shoulders back, when you stand with your posture good, do you feel more confident when your posture is good and the volume of your voice clearly fills a room? The cool thing about this is you can simply change your posture and your breathing and you're going to feel more confident. And then it builds on itself, right? When you combine that sense of confidence with the knowledge you've gained over with your research and your knowledge of the rules of procedure, you immediately become a force to be reckoned with. In part because you're standing up straight, you're breathing and speaking from your diaphragm, and you know your shit. Also, hand movements. Speakers often don't know what to do with their hands when they speak, right? Oftentimes people feel it feels awkward and forced, especially people who aren't used to speaking in public. So before we talk about hand movements, it's important to know that if you give a speech with your hands at your sides, if you just, I know you can't see my hands, but if you were to give a speech with your hands at your sides, not speaking and not moving them at all, it would feel totally awkward. You'd feel like a talking statue. But if you video yourself speaking this way, and we've done this in the past, and play it back, you'll see that it looks far more natural than it feels. Did you forget already that my hands are just at my sides? Right? As long as your intonation is right, it doesn't really matter. Right? That's key. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, I'm not recommending that you stand with your hands at your sides, right? I want you to realize, as it pertains to your hand movements, that there's a disconnect between how it feels to us and how it appears to the audience. Some people naturally speak with their hands. I'm one of them. I don't think about it. For others, they probably speak with their hands during private conversations, but as soon as they get into a group of people, they get in front of a group of people, their hands feel like basketballs in the way, and they don't know what to do with them. So you're going to get tired of hearing me say it, but I'm going to say it over and over again. Here's something you can practice. First, when you're speaking, especially if you're uncomfortable with your hand movements, find a comfortable resting place just below your chest. Let me see if I can. I don't know if this is going to work or I'm going to get off the screen. Wait, hold on. The producer's going to stand up with me. So when I say come on, let's go. There we go. So when I say find a comfortable resting spot, what you can do is like right here, just like have a place. You can hold your hands like this. You can put them like this, however you want to, and just have that be your resting spot and have that be a place that we're just going to refer to as your resting spot. Now I'm going to sit back down. As you speak, there we go, sorry. As you speak, you should move your hands to emphasize your points, right? All movement, we'll talk about this later in terms of walking around, all movement should be purposeful. So if you're talking about something big, expand your arms and then go back to your resting spot. right? If you're talking about something small, hold your hands like that, or do something like this, right? And then go back to your resting spot. If something's really important, make a fist. Don't make it look like you're fighting, but make a fist to emphasize it, right? You can do all that, and then when you're done, go back to your resting spot. And you can speak just in the same way that you can speak with your hands at your sides, you can speak with your hands in the resting spot and not have it look really weird. If you practice hand movements often enough, they're going to become natural. You won't have to think about them. What the hell? Okay, sorry, I know what's going on there. Okay, there's, doing what we can. There's certain resting spots, though, that you want to avoid. So let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. You don't want to have your hands interlocked behind your back, okay? Even though, look, my posture is good and everything, you don't want to be standing like this for a couple reasons. First, this is how prisoners stand during roll call. So you don't want some delegate looking at you and going, I think I remember that guy from juvenile hall. Right, by the way, this is also called, what's it called in the military?
Parade rest.
Oh, it's also called parade rest, okay? So you don't want to look like a soldier and you don't want to look like a prisoner. Not that there's anything wrong with being a soldier. That's just not how I want you to present yourself in front of the committee. The other thing is that you don't want to interlock your hands below your stomach, right? Because one thing, if you see what happens is it immediately makes you slouch over, right? And so you kind of look like you're praying that this speech is going to end soon. And if you look like you're praying that the speech is going to end soon, the delegates who are listening to you are going to feel the same way. So you don't want to do that either. And you definitely don't want to be standing with your hands in your pockets, right? I mean, that's just way too casual. It screws up your posture, but either way, you don't want to do that. You're a representative of a country. You should be dignified at all times. And so that's not with your hands in your pockets. Now next, I want to talk about eye contact. What? Okay, eye contact. You want to make eye contact with the whole audience, right? Some speakers will give eye contact to each person, like they'll go from left to right across the room or vice versa, and do it relatively quickly. That way you don't have to look at anyone for any length of time, because you don't want people in the audience to like feel awkward or weird. Why is this person staring at me? But you don't want people to feel neglected at the same time. Like, why is this person not looking at me? If you have trouble looking at people's eyes because it feels awkward, you may want to try what Sebastian calls the Unibrow Trick. And that is that instead of looking into people's eyes, look at the area right between their eyes, as if they had a unibrow. When you're looking at somebody's eyes, like that spot right there, nobody can tell. They can't tell if you're actually looking in their eyes. You could be, you could not be, they can't tell. Now, if somebody actually has a unibrow, you might want to be careful about that because they may be self-conscious about it. But aside from that, you can just go across the room and look in people's unibrow and move across the room and go back and forth, right? And when appropriate, look at the chair. Lastly, walking. When you're up there talking and you're in front of the committee, don't walk back and forth constantly. It's distracting. It's hard to follow. As with hand movements, it's best that if you're going to walk, you walk with a purpose. When you don't have to walk, so this will be one of the...
You gonna put your glasses back on?
No, I just didn't.
No, I meant, because you did it in the last one.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to, I was just making a joke.
So, finish off with, as with hand movements, it's best to walk with a purpose. So, for example, it's a good idea to walk in between the points that you're making. So if you're going to make a point, you can walk a little and then start on another point. your transition between points will look more natural, and so will your walk. But don't abruptly start to walk. Also, it looks bad if you have a real short speech and you're walking all over the place. Walking is probably best suited for lengthier speeches. But in terms of nonverbal communication, one of the easiest things you can do by way of walking that can be incredibly impactful is to just take a step closer to the committee. Right? Just take one step closer to the committee to emphasize a point. It may be that you're fairly far away from most of the delegates. You were 10 feet away, and when you take your step, you're 9 feet away. But it can be very impactful. People will see that. You've moved closer to them, and we note those kinds of things. These are all the different kinds of nonverbal communication that you should be thinking about. But again, you have to practice it. You have to practice it in simulations. You have to see what's comfortable for you. What might work for you won't work for somebody else. But you have to address all of these. And I'll be looking for that in your upcoming speeches.